All right. Welcome everyone to the Soil Health Network training series. This is our third session out of four for our fall and winter training series. And today's um, today we're going to be talking about inclusive outreach strategies for engaging diverse producers. And this topic is important when engaging producers across your region. It's connected to soil health and also the larger breadth of our work as we support producers and being stewards of their land. Um, Today we have Deborah Nares with American Farmland Trust as our facilitator and moderator of the panel. And our panel includes Kathleen Ackley, Sylvia Cuesta, and Vanessa Lozano Perez, who will introduce in a little bit. But Deborah, actually, if you want to come off mute and introduce yourself to the group, that would be wonderful.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deborah Nares. I'm the California Senior Manager at American Farmland Trust. I've been working with American Farmland Trust for a little under 4 years now. We primarily work with farmers on supporting regenerative practices, soil health practices, water conservation, as well as land protection. So that's agricultural easements, and farm viability in general. That includes land transfer, succession planning, land access to land, and business technical assistance. We do that throughout the nation in a 200+ organization, and we do so in regionally specific ways through policy, research, and technical assistance, implementation, field work, one-on-one with farmers. So I'm happy to be here. Good to see everyone and connect with you all today. I hope this will be a conversation and not just a presentation, but things that we can all learn from each other. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Deborah. Very happy to have you all here today. Before we go into the panel discussion, I'll share a few slides to set some context on this topic. And as always, we have our outcomes for the training session. And today we hope that the network leads will understand the history of exclusion of BIPOC women and other underserved producers in Oregon's agriculture and how it shapes the landscape today, and takeaway strategies and practical steps to meaningfully engage producers not currently being reached, serving your whole population through inclusive outreach efforts. So we'll start the section off by really defining our focus for the day, walking through some definitions and setting the context of the training. Some of the terms we used in the in the title of the session is the word inclusive. And a lot of these words can be maybe people have different perspectives on them. And so wanting to really come together under one common definition. And so inclusive means broad in orientation or scope, including everyone, especially including and accommodating people who have historically been excluded. And that's from Merriam-Webster. And so being inclusive is the act of not excluding. The term diverse means differing from one another. Similar to inclusion, it includes many different types of people or things. And when I think of the word diversity or diverse, especially thinking about farming, we know maximizing biodiversity is really key to soil health. So thinking about microbes, thinking about plants, farm scale, thinking about small scale farms to broad acre, years of experience in one's field of work. And we can also think about gender identity and age diversity and cultural and ethnic diversity. And the term outreach too. Outreach is the activity or process of bringing information or services to people, specifically maybe where they live or spend time. And so it's that act of reaching out. It's going out of your kind of normal space and reaching others. And I like this last definition too. Outreach is the activity of providing services to any population that might not otherwise have access to those services. So outreach isn't just putting up a flyer in your office, but rather going out and reaching others. And so, as we put those words together to focus on this training today, we hope that you all gain an understanding of issues specific to those who have historically not been included and are diverse compared to the dominant or typical Oregon farmer and rancher. And we'll go into kind of what that means in a moment. And we hope you take away strategies and frameworks to meaningfully engage these producers in your soil health work. And so OrCAN uses the term historically marginalized, underserved, and or under-resourced producers, which means, includes, but is not limited to Native American, Indigenous, Black, Latino, and or other people of color. You might hear the term BIPOC used today, or other terms like Hispanic, and other marginalized groups such as LGBTQIA+, people with disabilities, low income, and beginning and small scale producers. I share this with a sense to, or I share this with the goal to get a sense of who's included in the conversation today, which can be helpful for what we discussed today. But really, this is meant to unpack, not bundle individual or community identities. And the why is because each group, each family, each individual has a different history and unique experience, either with farming, ranching, or just living and existing in Oregon today. And so we'll dive more into that in our conversation. Some of kind of just taking a step back to, we are talking about a little bit of history of exclusion in Oregon, and that can be heavy for folks too. And so wanting to make sure that please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If that's sharing some other, we'd love for you to engage in the chat too, share some other insights or knowledge, or step away off camera, grab some tea, water. So wanting to give you all that permission too. Okay, so looking at a little bit broadly in the US and Oregon landscape, have a few points of data here. Nearly 40% of US farmland is rented or leased from agricultural landowners, the majority of whom are non-operator landowners. So landowners who are not the farm operators own the land, and that land is rented or leased. And with that too, over 40% of US farmland is expected to change hands in the coming decades. These numbers, these percentages, I believe are a little bit lower in Oregon, where there are a little bit more operating landowners. And additionally, and specifically in Oregon, as of the 2022 farm census, 44% of producers identify as female, 96% identify as white, 3.3% identify as a producer of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, and the average producer age is between 55 to 74 years. And so with this information here, we see that less than 4% of producers in Oregon are non-white, but we also see that 40% of farmland is expected to change hands in the coming decades. So when we look into the future, where we think the sort of next generation of farmers will be, we know that there will be a more diverse audience. And also wanting to note that I'm pulling from the farm census here, and there is some discrepancy and a lot of discrepancy and a lack of trust in the farm census. So this information is useful and encourage folks to kind of get an understanding of the lay of the land and understand that not everyone is counted in these numbers. And there's a lack of trust, especially with the most marginalized producers. So I encourage you all, and we encourage you all to understand your community's through the interactions that you have with them, through local testimonials and personal testimonials. These numbers might not represent the region you're working in. And some things to think about in terms of farmers of color. Discrimination is still happening in both explicit and implicit ways. And just wanting to also take a step back, that this slide and one more slide is from Dr. Gabrielle Roche McNally with American Farmland Trust, who gave me permission to share this information. And we'll share a resource at a webinar that she facilitated too in the past with these slides if you're interested to learn more. So we can look at the Pigford versus Glickman decision, which was one of the largest civil rights suits ever paid out based on discrimination that farmers of color were facing with the USDA. We also know that federal environmental programs like the USDA EQIP and CSP offer huge conservation and climate benefits through soil health practice implementation. But as of 2021, only 1% of farmers of color are enrolled in the largest conservation programs in the country. So many things have improved, but we know that farmers are still facing barriers, including structural barriers to accessing and owning land, due to a history of dispossession, particularly for Indigenous and Black communities. And so that really has very much led to what we see today, with very few pieces of land still owned by these communities. So if you'd like to take away something from this slide, it's how important it is to be working with underserved communities, particularly those that still own and manage land, to keep that land in farming, because we know how threatened it continues to be. Okay, thinking about Oregon, we see how history shapes our current agricultural landscape. Here, I wanted to share some further readings that I'll share post-training, and we'll give a short summary for each to really zoom out on the soil health work that you're doing in your region. This is really just scratching the surface, so please share in the chat anything else that comes to mind that is important to consider when thinking about the farming context in Oregon. Oregon's racial makeup has been shaped by 3 Black exclusion laws that were in place during much of the region's early history. These laws, all later rescinded, largely succeeded in their aim of discouraging Black people from settling in Oregon early on, ensuring that Oregon would develop as primarily white. These exclusion laws and clauses in Oregon's constitution were created throughout the 1800s, but racist language stayed in the Constitution until 2002 in our state constitution. So that is a brief overview of the Black exclusion laws in Oregon's constitution. The Donation Land Law of 1850, also known as the Oregon Donation Land Act, granted public land to white males and married women to claim 320 to 640 acres of free land. This accelerated the displacement of Native Americans and had a lasting impact on Oregon's history and development. Through this act, white settlers claimed nearly 9 million acres of land in the 1850s, which was taken from the Native Americans, and especially on rural lands in the Willamette, Umpqua, and Rogue valleys that formed a grid-like farming pattern that we all know farming to be today. The Bracero program, also formally or officially known as the Mexican Farm Labor Program, brought in over 15,000 Mexican men to Oregon from 1942 to 1947 to aid with the agricultural labor shortage during World War II. The Braceros helped Oregon sustain agricultural production during the war, but they faced harsh working conditions and racism. It really shaped our agricultural system today and our reliance on immigrant farm labor. This program was throughout the US. Oregon had over 15,000 Mexican men register, but over 4.5 million men were brought to the US from 1942 to 1964 to do manual labor. Lastly, but definitely not least, The Place Matters piece was written by Emily Chen with EcoTrust, and shares 6 stories that highlight Asian American farming in Oregon, weaving together a long history of Chinese and Japanese farmers and farm workers in Oregon to Executive Order 9066 during World War II, to modern day and how culture ties to place and to farming. Is anyone else sharing things in the chat? Any other topics that are coming up? You mentioned 17,000 or 7,000 white settlers took all that land in just 5 years. Yeah. So can do a little exhale here. It's a lot, and is important to read about and understand the context of where we are today, and how that shapes what farming looks like. And so we talked about this idea of land loss, but also wanting to bring in land back. We know that there's this history of land loss, and it's not just relevant to Black and Indigenous communities, as particularly highlighted in this slide, but just how much land has been lost. And there are organizations, including land trusts and others working in this space, who are thinking about land back and reparations. So what does it mean to return land to communities who have lost their land over decades and centuries of dispossession? So I really encourage folks to dive more into these resources, which again, we'll share post-training, as you are interested. Okay, so with all that context in mind, let's hear from our panelists about inclusive outreach strategies to engage diverse producers. We're really excited and grateful to have these 4 with us today. And I'll pass it off to Deborah to kind of lead those intros and panel discussion.
Thanks, Sage. Thank you for inviting me to this training. And I think for the end goal of being able to understand strategies and noting that there are different people and organizations that come from very different places in this strategy, different strategies, right? Just to say we're all in a different trajectory here and trying to get to the same goal. Introducing myself again, Deborah Natis, California Senior Manager at American Farmland Trust. As I mentioned before, we center on regenerative practices with farmers, one-on-one in the field, land protection, land access, transfer, succession planning, as well as other farm viability topics as business management and education. In my role, I have the honor and the privilege of being able to work with a team that also does so, conducts this work with the intention of focusing on the most marginalized farmers and ranchers, right? Those who we've just seen that have been historically excluded. And so that is kind of the platform by which we're talking about the work that we do and identifying who that is within individual communities and where our limited resources and time should be focused. So to help do this, we're going to have the panelists here. We have Kathleen Ackley with Wallowa Land Trust in Oregon. There's also Sylvia Cuesta with Friends of Family Farmers, and specifically the Oregon Farm Links Navigator Program for BIPOC producers, and also my colleague from AFT, Vanessa Lozano Perez. As I think we can start introducing ourselves as I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question, and each one can introduce themselves as we go around. But when I do ask these panelist questions, I would like the audience to also think about it as I'm asking it to you all, and how you would answer this question. And please, if you are able to, take out the chat function and go ahead and respond there. Having others in the audience and other participants see your responses will create, think a little bit more opportunities for networking and collaboration, if they aren't already. So maybe I'm going to take a step back here and give you a little bit more of an introduction of myself and how I come to this work. Previous to being at American Farmland Trust, back about 22 or so years ago, I was hired by a resource conservation district on the central coast of California. And this RCD had it was post this Pickford lawsuit, right? Where there was a real reckoning and understanding that that a large portion of the population of farmers that have been deliberately excluded from USDA programs. And there was a reckoning in figuring out how these RCDs or even the USDA was going to make amends to that and really address these issues. And so I was hired as a field assistant at our RCD for an area of California that was predominantly Mexican farmers, small scale vegetable farmers, but also a lot of strawberry. It was a hill slope, very sandy, marginal soils, very erosive, right up against the National Marine Sanctuary in the Monterey Bay. And the two main resource concerns in this area that they had hired me for, one was erosion, soil erosion in the winter, and the other was nitrates in the groundwater. And so some of the practices that were shown in small scales to been effective under these circumstances within this watershed and within this community of farmers was vegetative practices such as cover crops, grassed waterways, hedgerows, these types of practices that were seasonal. And they were important because, like I mentioned, in strawberry crops, you have the plastic that goes over the beds right before the winter time. And so they're freshly disked. You have plastic on a hill slope, rains come, erosion, right? And the same with the nitrates that had been applied and in many cases overly applied. And so they hired me because the predominant language in this area was Spanish. And this conservation district at the time had one Spanish speaker. She was a director, learned Spanish, in her as an adult in the Peace Corps, and she clearly knew that in order to be able to do effective outreach into this community, she wanted to hire someone that could connect with the community. So they hand me a Nokia cell phone, a 4-wheel drive truck, and a bunch of straw, rice straw and barley seed, and said, go out to those hills, knock on farm gates, and see how much grassed area we can cover before the winter rains come. And I came from Southern California. I did not come from that community, although, grew up with my grandpa on the farm. It was a very different culture, even within Latino culture, Mexican culture, to another one in from Southern California to the Central Coast. it was very different for me. And people saw that. And, they recognize some differences there. So I share this because I think there's a few lessons learned that I wanted to share with you. I think, first of all, the RCD probably could have hired someone, would have gotten further faster in their outreach and education by hiring someone from the community. I think that's one lesson to be shared here. And there were certainly folks that I later came to know that had raised their kids in this area and went off to college and had, certainly the credentials, if not more, I would say, and that were more relevant to that community to share their experiences in that community. The other lesson learned that I wanted to share here is because I was doing outreach and education, and I was coming in fresh, new from another area, I didn't know exactly how to implement, for example, grass roads or cover crops. And what I did, my approach was, when I found someone who was kind enough to show me and demonstrate, we created a little work party around it. And I basically said, I can bring some folks from my office, and if you can bring some folks from your farm and from your, maybe your partner or family, create a little work party, do it together. And we learned together this way. And so as I started doing that, taking that approach, it started to grow. And as I started integrating more into the community, years had gone by. I raised my kids in the same schools as the farmers that I was supporting. Trust was gained, and I think that, well, one, they knew my face, and so they knew that when I invited it to something, it was going to be, first of all, there's going to be food. So I never skip out on food. I think that is a very important elixir for relationship building. And then the other is that I wasn't going to take up too much of their time, and they were going to get something on the other end of it. If nothing else, peer learning, right? I think the other lesson learned about some of the implementation of these programs, or practices rather, is that we noted that not everyone in the community could access federal funding. Not everyone qualified for federal programs, right? Either because they didn't have Social Security number to get their farm tract number, or because they didn't have long-term written leases, et cetera. They didn't speak the language, et cetera. The list goes on as to why. And so I started to develop incentive programs such as cover crop reimbursement programs, or the straw and seed programs that really took off, that was incentivize and connect folks again around in more of a social and peer learning atmosphere. So that's the other, I think, point I can share about that experience. But here's like the punchline, I think, is that it wasn't easy. It required alternative ways to engage with folks. I couldn't assume that I can just, send out an email and everyone would get it, because there's different tech and literacy abilities, right? So it was a little bit, you had to understand that context to know, like, an email may not be appropriate. Perhaps it's a phone call and a visit, and read the room to see how long you stay, right, on that visit to deliver that invitation to a workshop or a program. Again, I think that it really took more time than if I were to have been focused on farmers who may already find it, one, speak the language, two, already know where their USDA service center is located and have inroads in there. So just to say, it's not easy, but that's the work. That's the work. So if you have any experiences that, maybe that resonate with you that you'd like to share with the group, please drop them in the chat and we can dip into them later. But I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists and ask them how they orient to these strategies for creating more inclusivity into your programs. So we can start with Kathleen. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do connecting with BIPOC producers and communities to land and soil, and what does it mean to you to meaningfully engage with BIPOC producers you work with?
Thank you for that. I loved your presentation. It was nice to hear your perspective. Thank you for sharing that. My name is Kathleen. I am the Executive Director of Wallowa Land Trust. We're based out in Wallowa County, the northeast corner of Oregon. We're pretty rural and remote. Our entire county population is 7,200 people, but we do get a lot of visitors, and we still do not have a stoplight. That's an important part, and we want to keep it that way. I was, and I guess I can screen share, because I think you guys would rather look at pretty pictures than us, right? So I don't know who in this audience has spent time in Wallowa County. It's beautiful. Oregon's largest wilderness area. It exists in Wallowa County. It is the Eagle Cap Wilderness. And this is kind of the iconic scene that a lot of people think of when they're coming into Wallowa County. For context, we're a conservation organization. We're a land trust. So we work with private landowners on ways for them to conserve their property. And mostly here we have ranchers. We do have some farmers, but we've worked with a lot of ranchers. And part of our mission statement says that we're going to work collaboratively with our local community, with governmental agencies, but we also specifically state that we are going to be working with tribes, with Indigenous people. And this area has been home to the Nez Perce, Cayuse, and Umatilla for at least 16,000 years. It's their ancestral homeland. And this map here that I'm showing you, this right here, maybe you can see, I don't know if you can see me moving the cursor here. This is the county, Wallowa County, where that's what we serve. We're based here in Enterprise. And we have relationships with 3 tribal nations. The Nez Perce tribe is in Idaho. We have the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. They are based in out of Mission, Oregon, by Pendleton. And then up here on the Colville Reservation in Washington, it's a confederation of 12 bands, but one of those bands are Nez Perce. They're the Chief Joseph band that reside up in Colville. So, there are other people with deep ties to this community that are enrolled in Warm Springs or in Yakima. It's very dispersed. So for us, and thinking about our conservation work, right around 2018 and 19, we were doing strategic planning and having a deeper, heartfelt look if we were being true to what our mission said and how were we actually working with Native people. And so we started on a basic listening journey program where we visited all 3 reservations, staff, some board. We just spent the entire day there listening. There was no structured agenda. Yes, there was food. Of course, you have to have the food. But we just invited people to come and talk to us and share whatever they wanted to about their thoughts on Wallowa County, about conservation. It didn't matter. We weren't there to dictate what they were going to say. And most of the time it was just us listening. And after those days that we spent on those different reservations, we were thinking about all of the things that we heard. And there were some common themes. We heard about concern about diminished access to usual and accustomed areas in their ancestral homeland. So not being able to access areas that by treaty right they should be able to access to be able to practice their, culture and traditions. We heard about like not knowing where to go anymore, particularly for Chief Joseph Band up in Colville. That's like 6 hour drive. The other two reservations are a minimum of 2 hours. So there's distance to get to Wallowa County. And particularly for Chief Joseph Band, there's just this sense of losing cultural knowledge because of the barrier of distance and not being able to be on the homeland. So much of the culture is deeply intertwined with place, the language, all of it, that if you are not in your homeland, it makes it more challenging for them to be able to continue their culture. So we heard about barriers of it's too far away. I can't afford gas. Where am I going to stay? It's expensive. And then we don't feel welcome. Heard more than one deeply disturbing stories about people coming to Wallowa County and feeling, having racist attacks, feeling completely unwelcomed. So all of this together, it was a lot to take in. It was my first experience doing something like that, so I wasn't sure what to expect. And coming back from it, we were certainly thinking, well, God, we really heard a lot. What are we going to do as an organization? And one thing that kept coming to me was this idea of access. And as a land trust, we have relationships that exist with lots of landowners within Wallowa County. And so in 2019, we just did some outreach with a couple landowners and say, what do you guys think about providing access? And then we reached back out to the tribal members that we had talked to and said, well, what do you guys think about you come down to dig roots and we'll find some private pieces of ground that you can come out and access. And we will make sure that you have your mileage paid for, that we feed you, that you have lodging, and I'm really wanting them to feel welcome. So this started out in this program, which now we call it the Wallowa Gathering. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys could have been gazing at this beautiful picture the entire time. This is Wallowa Lake, and these are the Wallowa Mountains. This is Chief Joseph. This is the town of Joseph. So that first year, there was a lot of excitement, and we had 17 gatherers come down, and I love this picture. Bittersweet. And they came down and visited two different properties over the course of 2 days and dug roots in around May. And they met with the landowners, and it was about 2,000 acres, I'd say. And they were able to make some really meaningful connections with landowners. One landowner in particular, they were a little like, well, what is this about this gathering with tribal members? But they got out there on the land together with some tribal members, and it was all we did was facilitate the opportunity for that relationship to happen, for them to get to know each other. And then they had the conversation. And after that, that particular landowner has been huge, has been participating in this program. They've talked about land back, returning their land to the tribe. So it's been like this instigator, facilitator of these relationships happening. So we started it in 2019. There's about 17 Nez Perce women. And then they went out and dug their first foods. We are now, this past year in May, we had over 170 people. So it has grown exponentially. We have folks that come from across Oregon, Washington, Idaho. And while the vast majority do have those ancestral ties to the county, we still do have some people who are not enrolled in tribes that are specific to these three states, but are perhaps displaced or college students who are away from home and they're here at Eastern Oregon University and want to find a way to connect with other Native people and practice culture. So over the course of these 6 years, it has grown exponentially. Like I said, we had over 170 people, and we're now over 80,000 acres. So every year we facilitate these opportunities for tribal members to come out back on the land. The event takes over the course of 4 days. People arrive on a Thursday, they dig all day Friday, they dig all day Saturday, and then usually there's a longhouse service on Sunday, and then they'll travel home. And for that duration, we provide food. We give them lodging, we provide any sort of supplies, and we do everything we can to make them at home and meet their needs so that they can come and practice their culture unimpeded. And we find the properties, we make sure people know where to go, and then they are left to practice their culture. And for me, it has been transformational and not just about the whole program. It's like just thinking about the land, because not only is this getting tribal members back out on the land, for me, it's been learning a lot about just what the really sacred act of digging roots, how that has an incredible reciprocal relationship with soil, the aerating of the soil, the helping native plants thrive, and especially when there's problems with invasive weeds, the connections, being able to just create space to make those connections with landowners and seeing that blossom so that tribal members don't have to rely on the land trust to be able to come out and go out and access properties. So, I mean, I can go on about this for a very long time, but it is a wonderful, I've enjoyed the project, but also it has encouraged our land trust to be thinking about land return. And we have this is a picture of a piece of property that was 30 acres that we returned to the Nez Perce tribe, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And then we facilitated the return of another 17 acres, less than a mile from here. And then we are right now collaborating with the tribe on another land return project. So, yeah, and this was a picture that was taken at the last land return ceremony that we had. So I just hope that this gives you maybe a little bit of very high level overview. I'm more than happy to talk more detail about what this program is about and how it's gone so far, but I appreciate being given the time to share it with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen, and appreciate bringing all these beautiful photos also so we can get a better sense of the community you're working with. I'm gonna offer some space also to Sylvia next to answer this question, telling us about herself and the work that you're doing, Sylvia, with BIPOC producers.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Kathleen, for sharing such a beautiful story and pictures. That was lovely. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to see my lovely face because I did not bring any pictures. Most of you in the room know Friends of Family Farmers and myself, but just quick introduction. Sylvia Cuesta. I'm the statewide farmland navigator for the farmland program at Friends of Family Farmers. My work directly with the Navigate program as when I started, not currently. The program currently is expanded and it serves all beginning farmers seeking support with land access. But when the program started, the origin of the program was created specifically to support BIPOC producers with land access. As you know, land access is just one of the biggest but most barriers and challenges for underrepresented communities, for everyone, but it's specific for the underrepresented communities. There is a lot of barriers, discrimination, access to resources, funding, you name it, all of it piles up. So producers were voicing their concern and asking for help from Friends of Family Farmers to provide more support. We have the FarmLink program, which is just a platform, an online platform where people connect through the site. Landowners and land seekers connect through the site to access land, but there was just not additional that one-on-one support and help them navigate the process, which can be complicated especially for immigrant communities if language is a barrier. Understanding just all the nuances that comes with accessing land, due diligence, contracts, and all of that. So that's how the Navigate program came about. They did a pilot, they tried it out, and then tried to secure funding to make this just an ongoing program and support for all beginning BIPOC producers. And that's when I came in. They hired me to start the program, and here we are. That is, I think, 4 years now. The program has grown and expanded, but still my work is still mainly working with BIPOC producers, providing that one-on-one technical assistance, going to just between helping them with the land search, going to view properties, doing due diligence, connecting them to resources, conversation with landowners. A lot of that support and education also involves with landowners, trying to making sure that what entails to working with an immigrant farmer with a different culture, with different farming practices. If they have cultural practices, will they be okay with that? Just help them navigate that process and the communication and understanding the process of it. So there is just a lot of that going on in our work. And as I mentioned, land access is a very personal and emotional process. And so supporting our BIPOC producers, not only with the technical support and writing contracts and going to find a property, but also that emotional support that goes with that. That's how how our program, how we engage meaningful with those BIPOC producers, trying to understand all the nuances that comes with their culture background, like Deborah mentioned earlier, not just because I speak Spanish and I come from the Latinx community, that means that I understand every Latinx community, because they all have their difference, the difference in understanding their culture. They all bring different things, and trying to bring that approach every situation with kindness and meet producers what they are, and trying to understand how you can support them and what relevant resources are out there for them that will meet their needs, because not every resource or every support for a BIPOC will serve every BIPOC producer, because everyone is unique, every situation is unique, and taking the time to build that relationship and have those conversations and understanding every situation or every farmer, and how you can meaningful engage and support, whether it's language support with translation, interpretation. We try to provide all of that, and also finding service providers that can provide that support to them. The same thing with the language, not just because service providers speak the language doesn't mean they also understand the nuances that come with agriculture services, understanding the land. An attorney who does contracts doesn't mean just because they speak Spanish doesn't mean they understand the agriculture and land and contracts and all that stuff. So, for us, our work is trying to find those resources and connect our participants with that, and just building those relationships, taking the time to listen and to understand that part. And I hear that back from the people that I work with, that being able to work with someone they understand that, they can relate to that, to the culture, to the language, is very meaningful to them, to be able to provide that support with interpretation, translations with other languages as well. Let's see. I don't know if that answers the question. I can go on, but I want to also leave space for Vanessa, and I can answer more questions and share more
Thank you,
about work
Sylvia.
later on. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there's a few more questions I think to expand on, but thank you for sharing some of those offerings also and your lessons learned as well. Thank you for all the comments in the chat. I don't know if you noticed, but I got kicked off the Zoom just a little bit again. So I lost a lot of the text, a lot of the comments that are happening in the chat. But I do see you, Shiny. Absolutely, landholders holding captive. This has been historically treacherous and it gets exhausting. These are the realities of seemingly benevolent land access approaches that don't truly offer access and like Alicia is saying down here is ability to practice ceremony in perpetuity. So thank you for calling out that truth. I encourage you all to continue, and I'm going to pass it on to Vanessa because I think we have a lot more lessons to be learned here and experiences to be shared. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, I'm honored to be a part of this training today. Just hearing such empowering women that are joining us today, I feel truly honored and a little bit of imposter syndrome, not gonna lie. Hearing Kathleen and Sylvia and Deborah talk about their life work is just, I'm in awe of all of you. So my respects go out to all of you for contributing like you do. My role here at AFT, I'm the California Regenerative Agriculture Coordinator. I joined AFT last year in November. My role as a technical service provider is a little upside down in comparison to Kathleen, Sylvia, and Deborah. I kind of just stumbled upon this work doing what I was originally doing. Growing up as the daughter of a Mexican migrant, my earliest memory of soils are tied to my father's hand. Those moments shaped my relationship with agriculture. The soil became a place where I felt connected not just to the land, but to my family's resilience. It grounded me in the realities that my father lived, navigating language barriers, cultural misunderstandings, and sometimes outright prejudice, all while working in conditions that rarely acknowledged his dignity and expertise. Today, when I work with producers, especially BIPOC producers, I carry those memories with me, and my lived experience helps me recognize the unspoken challenges, the hesitation to ask questions for fear of being judged, the cultural nuances that influence how people approach land stewardship, and the emotional weight of working in spaces where our families have historically been undervalued. My connection to the soil is personal. It's about ancestry, struggle, and pride. It reminds me why equity in agricultural isn't just a profession or a professional commitment. It's a continuation of my family's story and a way to honor the hands that came before me. I pursued my degree in agribusiness and plant science because I couldn't imagine doing anything outside of that. In my role providing technical assistance on soil health with American Farmland Trust, I focus on helping producers adopt practices that improve long-term resilience, build soil structures, and strengthen economic viability of soil health practices. This includes planning and supporting implementation of conservation practices such as the cover crop, reduced tillages, improved nutrient management, and whole farm soil health planning. A core of AFT's approach is pairing technical guidance with practical, culturally responsive support so that producers not only understand soil health principles, but can confidently integrate them into their operations. That's a little bit about what I do and what brings my passion to AFT. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm looking forward to learning more about everyone and the panelists and also the audience members and what they have to contribute to.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was beautiful, and thank you for honoring your family and your ancestors as well in this work. I think that's important, regardless of where we're from and who we are, is to think about those who came before us. I'm going to move us along to the next question. I think that this theme about communities and having real nuanced understanding of various cultures is what we're seeing right throughout these comments. And so this next question is more about how different engagement approaches can change within different contexts. I want to call out that, we have myself from California, Vanessa in California, talking to a room full of Oregonians, and I feel like this is like I want to say that is there's lessons to be shared across our states, no doubt, but I want to say that those differences are also valued, and to understand those differences is where I think we're going to gain a lot of traction in being able to do the best job we can to meet farmers where they're at, because different communities have different needs, right? Even within Vanessa and I, we work together day to day. I shared that I'm mainly centered in the Central Coast for the past 20 some years, with small scale Latino farmers, Spanish speakers. That's been the community that I've been primarily focused on. And Vanessa comes from the Central Valley, and also working in a Latino farming community. And we're continuously looking and comparing at the differences that we have within two very different parts of the state, same Latino farming community, but very different challenges, from soil related challenges, but also culturally. Some of the things that I think Vanessa and chime in, please, Vanessa, if if I miss some of these, is noting that, one is scale because of the nature of the cropping system. I think that's the first thing to understand, and you all as farm support service providers understand that it has to be crop specific, coming from predominantly row crop, a small scale organic, and comparison to permanent crops, orchards. Like these cropping systems also impact the way that people farm, people connect with others. I think in terms of regenerative practices or even organic certification, we see that a lot within in the Central Coast, small scale Latino farmers, because of an existing incubator program that's been, supporting a lot of small scale organic. Whereas, here Vanessa sharing that that's less so in the Central Valley of California, that they don't have the markets for it. And so the understanding of soil health practices comes from a different place, right? Vanessa, do you have any other kind of takeaways in terms of comparisons that we've noted over?
No, yeah, I think you nailed them all. I think historically, the Central Valley has been consolidating farms over a long period of time. You have a small farm in the Central Valley can be 500 acres. And it's been land that's been in one family for over 5 generations. And it's also just referring back to the resources. A lot of white farmers are aware of land trusts. If you talk to a lot of Hispanic or minority group farmers, they don't know what a land trust is. So I think, or even just a trust in general, a family farm trust, where you're able to pass down the the land in a law-abiding way, and reducing your tax expenses on the land when passing that generational wealth from one generation to the next. They have that know-how, whereas a lot of minorities, we do not. I mean, as I learn, when I got this position, I started learning a lot more about the resources and tax laws and all these resources that are available to help generations exiting and the new ones coming in. So yeah, I think that's correct, Deb. And then in sense of soil health practices, it's gonna vary a lot depending on the location because of the climate and the commodities that you can grow in one area. So I think when offering technical assistance for soil health practices, it's important to have that knowledge on on the cycle of the crop, because you're not going to come and offer the farmer cover crop seed when it's already too late to get into the field and the rains have already came in, because then they're going to look at you like, well, it's a little too late, right? So you want to be able to be relatable and be understanding about what their needs are. Also, not assuming what their needs are. That's a big one. Just hearing hey, what are your goals? How can I be of help? How can I be of an assistance? Not necessarily, this is what I have to offer. No, you meet the farmer's needs. But yes.
Speaking of knowing your audience, I think one of the recent conversations you and I had, Vanessa, was this idea of being able to access government programs and people's immigration status, right? And I had come from a community that the majority of farmers that we work with did not have secure status. They don't have social security numbers, and you were I kind of made that assumption in front of you, and you said, well, that is not necessarily the case within our community. Most of the farmers that we're working with, and again, we're still talking about, Mexican farmers that we're working with have been here for generations, and that is not, the immigration status is not the issue. We have other resource concerns, other concerns, but that's not the predominant one. So again, it just really underscores, I think, the ability to spend time doing deep community work and understanding your inroads. I would, again, offering, if any of this resonates with the audience, with those of you that are working with farmers, and how you've been able to have these more effective strategies for outreach and engagement. So thank you for that. Whoever put up that question, I think it's good to keep us on track with how do producer engagement. Oh wait, yeah, that's the one we just got done talking about. So the third question being where you see other barriers and challenges to existing outreach strategies, and what are some of the opportunities I see? I mean, this is a question I'd like to open this up at this point to the audience to chime in on. Kathleen, Sylvia, Vanessa, some of your barriers and challenges and opportunities. Jump in if you have something.
I can go. Yeah, some of the barriers with outreach, it's all about building trust in our organization and program. Also, at the time when we started, and it was new. Not a lot of people knew about it. We didn't have a lot of, success stories to tell us, like, yeah, or other farmers that can say, it's like, yeah, this program, I got help, and this program really helped, or they provided me the support that I needed. So at the beginning, we definitely had a lot of challenges with outreach and getting BIPOC farmers to enroll or sign up for the Support of the Navigate program. What we did with outreach, we reach out to a lot of the organizations that are providing already farming training programs or some technical assistance to BIPOC producers. And we started building those relationships with those organizations, and also asked for funding from the grants that we received to share with those organizations to help them with their work as well. So we not just reach out to them just to get them to do something for us, but also that we can share something with them and provide some stipend for maybe referrals or participants that they in their program. But that was one of the things that we try and did a lot of outreach and attended a lot of their events, not just, like I said, it's always nice to reach out to someone and say, how can I help you? Or how can our program also support your work that at some point will also benefit us as well, or everyone else. So that was a good approach that we try and to start building those relationships with other organizations and getting referrals. Um, yeah, that's what we try. And some it worked, some it didn't, but we still have, I mean, we build those relationships and we have those connections with other organizations. And it takes a long time. It's all about the building trust. And that will be another common thing that will come out of here is just the trust building. It takes time. And sometimes you get some good referrals, recommendations. Sometimes it's not the right fit for certain people or organizations to work, but you just keep trying. And that's what we did.
Thanks, Sylvia. Vanessa or Kathleen, barriers or challenges or any opportunities you see?
I think a lot of the barriers have been mentioned either earlier on the introductions with Kathleen, the introduction with Sylvia, and we've been kind of reiterating them. But the ones that I kind of see in this space personally more so is the limited visibility in like communities that need the most support. Oftentimes, a lot of these resources are emailed to technical service providers, and then technical service providers email them to their contacts, but it doesn't really reach farmers outside of what their ag network is, right? So we've partnered up with California FarmLink and American Farmland Trust to offer a course called El Resiliador. It's ag business courses once a week for 4 weeks for Spanish-speaking producers to empower them. And I've been putting posters up with where I know that farmers go. So I've been going to panaderias, I've been going to the gas stations where I know that they go after work, and in the hopes of maybe a smaller new producer going in, walking in, and seeing the flyer on the door in hopes that they spark some curiosity and say, oh, maybe that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll go to it. So I think as technical service providers, don't be scared of thinking outside of the box. Don't be scared of going into spaces that maybe you wouldn't originally go into. I think there's a huge opportunity there um, to reach a bigger audience, I feel. And I'll hand it over to Kathleen.
Well, I recognize that the work we're doing is different and that it's not necessarily the producer engagement. But we do get I have a lot of other land trust colleagues who are like, we want to do something similar. We want to do more tribal engagement. How do we do this? And it's always such a huge question because there's this Western orientation of thinking all I need is my little checklist. I'll go and do these three things, send out an email, and boom, I'll have my tribal engagement work done. And what I've learned personally over the last 12 years is it takes a long time. Just like Sylvia said, it takes forever. You have to build trust. You have to show up. You have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to don't waste people's time. But also, you have to show up personally. It's not just through your job and that, oh, this is what I'm going to do today from 9 to 5. And then you get a checkout and go home and not think about it and trying to segregate your personal life with what you're doing professionally. For me, this particular work has been deeply personal, and I don't know how you could be successful if you were not to include that part of yourself in it.
Absolutely intertwined. It definitely is. I'm seeing some movement in the chat. Let's see. Reminded of what Alicia said in the chat earlier about showing up in places where people live their lives. I think that's, what Vanessa was alluding to, and Kathleen as well. And Nikita says that in the Mid-Willamette Valley, it's more challenging connecting with diverse communities because of so many reasons. There's less people of color in rural spaces, less support and resources in the Mid-Willamette Valley to have traction to attract BIPOC community. We've worked hard to reach these siloed communities, but the lack of support for BIPOC people in the Valley make it very challenging for people to engage. Yeah, I think we were talking about having those inroads rather than having it be just a, kind of a as Kathleen said, as a checked box, right? Is to being able to be in those spaces, I think is important. And if you don't have it within your organization or within your community, finding someone who does. Penny says that much like Sylvia described, we've pursued opportunities to build relationships with partner organizations that are able to focus on specific needs of our local Spanish-speaking and immigrant communities. We've written capacity for collaboration for these partners into our grants and are able to mutually identified ways to partner for mutually beneficial programming. Sure, that's consistent with what we're saying. If you don't have that, finding those who do, right? Anyone else want to kind of comment on some of these chat comments?
I think the one that hit to home, and I saw it with my family, was the recent comment right now where it said, we often hear from farmers from a different cultural context that their farms are not taken seriously or seen as legitimate farming operations because they look different or operate on a smaller scale. So that one hit close to home because my dad, he had an education of he only went to school till 6th grade, and I learned so much from my father. He didn't have the vocabulary per se to be able to explain the scientific thought or the explanation behind the agronomy or the business terms, but he had the wealth of knowledge. And I think you have to be conscious of that. You have to, just because they may not be able to express their thoughts out loud in the way that as TA providers we have to. That doesn't minimize what they know, and they know so much, so much. So it's really heartbreaking for me to hear that that farmers are feeling that. And I think, like Deb said at the beginning with the survey, like taking that survey to become self-aware, I think if they're feeling that way, then you have to ask yourself what made them feel a certain way and how can we as an organization change that or move forward from it, because something does have to change. There's a saying that says people don't remember what you do, they remember how you made them feel. And I try to carry that with me wherever I go. If you are in a space, be empathetic, be open to hearing what their story is, and asking about their family, about their kids, like be grounded with that. And it's not just you're doing a job. I think it goes hand in hand with what Kathleen was emphasizing on. You cannot be successful in this job if you separate your work from your life. Like, this has to be hand in hand.
Yeah, I share that and relate to that sentiment. Thanks, Vanessa. That's great. Yeah, participants will remember that how they were treated, they were supported, and those lived experience go a long way because if they can see that you understand and know what they're going through or can relate to that and able to support and provide the relevant support that they need, they'll definitely remember those that goes a long way. And you can't separate, like you said, you can't separate that. I mean, it's like I even in my own personal time being out in at a farmer's market, I'm already talking to farmers and asking them questions, how are you leasing? Or, how's it going? Do you need any support? Are you connected with things? Did you know about resources? I was like, I can't sometimes cannot turn it off being out there and connecting with the community. And it feels great. It's not just doing your work 9 to 5 during the week. It's just continue that relationship building and connecting with people in the human level. It's goes a long way.
That seems to be consistent with what's going on in the chat here. The mention of traditional ways being known, right? And remembering that many of these communities, even if we're talking about whether we're talking about Native, Indigenous communities or supposed immigrant communities that have come from generations of farming and carry with them traditional knowledge and practices that we are now just calling agroecological or organic or regenerative, right? That have been traditionally ways of being in culture. So I think this is really valuing that ancestral knowledge and not seeing that as a diminishing that perspective just because it's different or a smaller scale, for example. We know that there are reasons for that, right, through our history with land theft, etc. Thanks, Sage. Yeah, so this last question is for all the participants, all the network leads, and wondering what are some of the outreach strategies that you have used to engage producers and the communities you serve? And are there certain communication channels that you do use? So feel free to either raise your hand, come off mute, write in the chat.
I see Alicia said in the chat that meals are a communication channel. Food as communication and connection.
Absolutely. Very important.
Language accessibility is really important.
Sure, yeah, just I appreciated, thank you for all the really thoughtful and heart-centered sharing. Really appreciate your time being with us today. And to the point that folks had mentioned earlier about, we've been creating a list of those kind of community locations where we feel like folks who were trying to, engage with our work. We're trying to make more lists of those places. Like we have a really great Asian grocery store and several tiendas here, and those different locations where even flyers and information might be shared. And so we've been trying to work to create some different lists of those opportunities just in terms of that advice that we would give to create more inclusive outreach strategies, is really putting our flyers in our outreach where folks, those community hubs, where folks will see them. But thanks for all the sharing. Really appreciate your time and effort in sharing with us today.
Thanks, Rihanna. Could you say maybe 1 or 2 sentences about how that's been going for you? Has that been a successful way of reaching folks, or do you feel that there's something else?
I think it has. I mean, we did some specific outreach around some funding opportunities. And when we went to the tiendas and introduced ourselves and mentioned what the flyer was for and that the flyers were translated, and it resulted in some great connections, and I feel like friendships. Those are places where we like to go and that we shop and we value. And so I think It just was, just to reflect back of just how positive the interactions were and the willingness to hang up the flyers. And so that then when we came back, it was like, oh yeah, you're that woman who's always hanging up flyers about farming stuff. And so it felt like that there was just a natural connection. And so we're hoping that that leads to further growing trust and, you know, maybe some cool vegetables landing on the shelf or neat herbs that we're hoping, it, you know, of course, just baby steps with that, but that we're hoping that that can lead to greater trust and more connection. So we're, you know, trying to, like you said, put in the effort to go where folks are, and then, and also to buy stuff when we're there. You know, we try to buy snacks and also support with our dollars when we're in those spaces as well, to really show that just that investment and appreciation of what they're offering the community.
Thank you. It's good to know that that strategy is working for you.
I had mentioned in the chat earlier that a lot of the challenges we face in reaching these communities are kind of built into our program priorities and funding priorities. We're trying to reach farm decision makers who are making decisions about land management, and that's not always doesn't always overlay perfectly with like what our BIPOC communities are doing, the roles that those folks are in. We're limited in our ability to work directly with farm laborers, which we know is, you know, a role that a lot of our BIPOC community members fill. We're limited in our ability to reach people doing urban farming for the similar reasons. And so, like Sylvia said, we have found a really good strategy to be partnering with local organizations that are able to prioritize reaching those communities specifically, because they already have the personnel and resources to make those community connections. And then we're able to identify mutually beneficial programming that can both meet the needs of the communities that they serve, allow us to better meet those communities as well. We've also found a lot of success with, again, going into their spaces and not trying to invite them into ours. So we go to a lot of events and meetings to talk about what we do and the resources we offer. And then, oh, there was the last one. What was it? Oh, and we try to identify spokespeople. I don't have a lot of credibility with communities I'm not a part of because that relationship building takes so much time. And so in the meantime, when we do develop a good relationship with someone who has successfully worked with us in our programs, developing their ability to talk about the benefits of these practices, to be a spokesperson for this work, so that they can say things and be heard in ways that we're not able to be heard. So sometimes finding the right people to say the right things is a strategy we use.
That's great, Penny. That's golden one. I think that, I mean, all of your points are really, really great, but that last one about having a spokesperson or having an inroad or that peer learning concept is, that's a golden one, I think. Before we go to Javier, I'll share that when I was doing this work, I described at the Resource Conservation District, it took a while. I would always say, like, I'm with the Resource Conservation District, con el Distrito de Conservación. Like, I would always say the organization that I was representing. And it, even after years and years of talking to these farmers and having relationships with them, they didn't recognize when there was a flyer with the Resource Conservation District logo or work on it until I had my name there. Oh, that's where Deborah works, right? And they would associate my name first before the organization. And I think it's just, and it's not to toot my own horn, right? It's just to say that the person matters, probably more so than the name recognition of the organization, right? And so that association kind of gives a sense of potential safe space, or I know somebody there. So just wanted to share that has been my experience as well. Thank you, Penny. And Javier, right, is next, and then I think Sylvia.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Javier Brenda, work with Adelante Mujeres. We are a cultural specific organization working with the Latinx community. And I just want to share about, even though we are use a holistic approach to the Latino community, we still have challenges with that community. We serve to immigrants, right, who move to the United States to get a better life, right? And for them, in their past, they were in agriculture, and then coming to this country and and start working in agriculture is like going or not growing in their lives, right? Not reaching their goals that they're thinking they want to do. And it is a challenge because, I used to work with other services such as empresas, creating businesses and another services that we are providing here in Adelante Mujeres, and they're very participative. But when it comes to agriculture, it is a challenge. And then more when we utilize regenerative agriculture, what does that mean, right? And we had to create our flyers, our outreach, very intensive about, showing a community garden, showing, our community working, creating that sense of community, and seeing that, we value, all the experience that they have, from their past, for the other countries that they got. And that's very important when you just kind of try to be empathic and value all these things. They start getting trust and connecting with you, right? And then we move forward from there, and we have classes, courses that we provide childcare, right? We determine the time that is going to be like, our community, they have current jobs, they have the timing, is available for them to do as well. Yeah, we kind of like provide snacks or food, but at the same time, we try to provide those snacks and food, but at the same time be culturally specific, right? Pan dulce, to have pan dulce in our tables for them, coffee. And we are kind of like a very, using this holistic approach, culturally holistic approach, I will say. But, then later on, we move to workshops where we have subject matter experts. They only speak English, right? And that's some challenges for us. And then we utilize, or we connect or collaborate with interpreters in the community and bring them to be able to interpret for them as well. We have different participants that, they are growing. It's very, Sylvia shared about how difficult for everyone is to get access to land. We have participants that, been having some land available, but difficulties in getting access to capital, right? Or difficulties getting connecting with government or state institutions, like there is no trust, right? And sometimes what I've been learning, they have bad experience, right? Maybe because it wasn't someone who speak the language, maybe because they didn't reach the goal, like they were like applying for a greenhouse, and because they were startups and it wasn't available for them, they didn't have a good experience, right? And we had to find alternatives to help them, like apply for an IDA program, individual development account, that is more state, find access to capital to community credit unions, right, with low interest, and then find ways to support our community. I feel like everyone is different, right? We talk about California, Mexican have been there for a while. Here in Oregon, we have more immigrants, right? It's the first time that they've been here, and very challenges for them, language barrier, access to capital, connection with government and state institutions as well. And I've been seeing all of that, and that's why we're thinking like Adelante Mujeres is seeking to purchase some land, to acquire some land, and be able to provide these to our participants. And when we're talking about a small scale and large scale, for us, a small scale is utilizing plots of 300 square foot. And when we're talking large scale, we talking about participants using 1 acre to 5 acres, right, to start selling in a farmer's market, right? It's not 300 acres, it's not 100 acres, it's small, it's still small, but we consider more commercial, right? And I feel like even though I feel very, very happy to work with this organization and support the community, we're still dealing and talking with institutions, talking to partners, right? In what way we can help our community, and mostly right now as well, we having difficult time for our community and different challenges right now, and as well having other resources, not only access to land or access to, they need access to a legal assistance regarding immigration issues, regarding all the situations that involve the community, the Latinx community, right? Even right now we have participants, we are referring them for food, right? Because they still at home, they are not working, and we have to consider that as a program, right? Because sometimes we say, okay, they don't want to participate. No, it's because other issues are coming right now, and they prefer to stay inside, stay in their houses, exposed as less as possible. If we have to start thinking about that and start new ways to provide services to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. Wow, that's a lot of really great points that you've shared. That last one in particular about we're in a climate of fear for a lot of our communities to go out and gather and have events. We've experienced this as well. Before it was, conferences and meetings and come one, come all, and we can, deliver this information in Spanish and we say so in the flyers, and it's just a very different space now. We have to be really careful, and not everyone feels like they are trusting of a gathering space like that, especially if they don't know who you are, right? Again, we'll go back to the theme here is the trust and the time that it takes. So appreciate you identifying that.
I'm gonna jump in here too, that we have about 11 minutes left, and so want to see if Sylvia, Deborah, Kathleen, Vanessa, if there's any kind of closing you all would like to do with the panel, any last comments too, and then we can shift to closing out the training.
Yes.
We could start with Sylvia too.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Sage. Yes, just reinforcing, I guess, the ways to build trust, that it's just understanding that it takes a long time, and to show up and be consistent with the work and the support that you provide, and making sure that to check if those resources and services are relevant and useful to the people that you're serving before handing out to them. I'm guilty of that as well. I have sometimes somebody sends me a resource, it's like, oh, for a BIPOC farmer, and we get all excited and just send it out. It's like, hey, here's a great opportunity, you should apply for this. And then later reading the fine print, that is nothing, it's not useful at all to them. And so that's, making sure that we do our due diligence and homework, and who do we serve, and understanding who the community is that we serve in, and how we connecting them to those resources. And really, the one thing that I can say the most is showing up and be consistent, meet them in person, try to meet them what they are, value their time and their work. They have, like everybody mentioned here, that work with Latinx community, they know so much, they have so much knowledge about farming and working the land, and they themselves don't value it, because the culture that we're in has told them many times, they've been told us that it's like, you belong in the field as a farm worker, and how dare you to dream that you can be a farm owner or have your own land. We've been told that they feel that agriculture and growing food is the lowest of think that you can do and that's all you deserve to be, and it's not true. And we need to make sure that we're not part of that continue making them feel like they're not worthy, because they're so valuable and they know so much and contribute so much, and make sure that they're compensated and treated with respect for what they are pouring, what the contribution is to our community and to us. So
Thank you for calling out compensation, Sylvia. Absolutely. Let's not forget about that.
yeah, we have,
Closing
sorry,
thoughts.
just
Oh,
when I
yeah.
add a little more, yeah, we do have an advisory council that guide our work, and Chinese here, who's been part of our council for many years, and yeah, providing compensation. And a lot of the participants that go through our program are also, some of them, part of our advisory council. They're continuing working with us and providing, and we compensate them when they have to meet with other farmers and share the knowledge and skills. And so yeah, we just keep using that, and the referral program. Nikita, who's also here, we participated in her marketing program, and she has sent in some referrals to us. And so staying connected, and those referrals, yeah, building those relationships pay off. And I appreciate and value every one of them. Thank you, Shiny and Nikita, and Javier, and Shade.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sylvia. Kathleen or Vanessa, any parting words?
I just wanted to express my gratitude for including me. I know when we first were talking about this, we're like, why would I be the appropriate person to be talking about Native people or outreach to tribes? And I was hoping that we could get my colleague Wenix Red Elk, who has been instrumental and phenomenal at spearheading this program. She was unable to participate, so I appreciate being included, and I hope that I want to think that every time this kind of a training or opportunity comes up, that I hope we can highlight Indigenous voices first, as opposed to someone like me. But thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kathleen. That's really valuable. I think the value there is that we're all coming from different spaces and communities that can all contribute to this work, right? Thank you for that. Vanessa, any last words?
No, it's been an honor to be here today and listen to each and every one of you, and listen to your expertise and how you've contributed. And I just want to point out that the fact that you're attending this training is also like a huge part, monumentally, to continue growing in the space and continue providing as best resources as we can to the BIPOC community. But yeah, I just want to thank Sage for inviting me into this platform, and getting to hear more than anything what everyone else is contributing, because I feel oftentimes like I've not done enough. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Vanessa. You certainly, as a producer yourself, as a farmer yourself, you add that added layer of perspective into this work. So I appreciate your words. I think just want to say some of the learnings that I've taken from this time together, as moving at the speed of trust was hallmark theme here. Not making assumptions about communities and how they learn, how they connect, and how they farm, and the experiences they have had and that have not been made available to them, I think, is another main highlight. And that there are different strategies to be able to connect with folks. And I'll hand it back over to Sage. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much for a beautiful panel discussion, and for network leads for your all contribution to the conversation. And I'm so excited to read through all the chat and definitely create a summary for everyone too, of some big takeaways, and continue this conversation. Something that kind of a few people had noted and that I just want to address too is that I am so grateful to have Deborah and Vanessa and Kathleen and Sylvia's participation in the panel today. And as we were building the panel too, noting that it's an Oregon-specific soil health network, and we have two people from California who are sharing about their experience. And I wanted to recognize that we did do some of that work to see if we can get some more Oregon-specific folks, as we have so much rich expertise in the state. And I think that that shows through you all as well. And just excited to, I hope you all took some great lessons away from California too that you can apply to Oregon, and huge thank you to our panelists and to you all for attending and participating.